Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine pouring your life's passion into understanding complex systems, discovering something profoundly broken that puts countless people at risk, and doing what you unequivocally believe is the right thing, to protect them.
Yeah, the absolutely right thing.
Right. Now imagine facing devastating personal and financial consequences, including imprisonment, for that very act of ethical disclosure.
It sounds almost unbelievable,
It
doesn't it?
really does. Today, we're diving deep into a story that challenges our very notions of justice, responsibility, and what it truly means to be a good actor in the digital age.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission for this deep dive is to explore the extraordinary journey of a cybersecurity professional whose lifelong curiosity and unwavering commitment to ethical disclosure led him down an unexpected and, frankly, terrifying path.
It really is a cautionary tale.
It is a real-world one,
Hmm.
and it ultimately reveals critical flaws not just in computer systems, but in the very societal frameworks designed, supposedly, to protect us.
And our source for this incredible account is a compelling interview transcript that lays bare, well, pretty much every raw detail.
Exactly.
You know, what's truly striking here, for me anyway, is how one individual's courageous attempt to do the right thing ended up exposing a much larger systemic issue. It just blew the lid off it.
Yeah, it forces us to ask a crucial question, doesn't it? How do we, as a society, perceive and respond to security vulnerabilities and the ethical individuals who discover them?
Because this isn't just a technical deep dive like you might expect when we talk about cybersecurity. I mean, the tech is there, but
But it's so much more.
it's a profoundly human story. It's filled with moments of personal sacrifice, profound injustice, and deep implications for anyone interested in the intersection of cybersecurity, justice. We're simply trying to navigate this complex, increasingly digital world.
Where understanding the nuances of intent versus action is just, well, absolutely critical.
Exactly. We're going to explore those blurring lines and how they can lead to such immense personal costs. It's quite a journey.
So let's begin at the very genesis of a hacker. Tracing that innate curiosity that so often defines those who truly excel in the world of cybersecurity.
Right, the origin story.
Our central figure in this deep dive is Alberto, based in Uruguay. And quite remarkably, he holds the unfortunate distinction of being, as he describes it, the first hacker imprisoned in Uruguay for so-called crimes.
So-called crimes. That phrase itself tells you a lot about his perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It's a heavy title, but it speaks volumes about the path his life would ultimately take.
So where does it start? Childhood.
Way back, his story of early fascination takes us back to his childhood when he was just 12 years old. Picture this. A young Alberto hunched over his Sinclair Spectrum plus AMA.
Oh, classic. The Spectrum. 48 kilobytes of RAM.
Exactly. A mere 48 kilobytes. I mean, to put that in perspective, that's a tiny, tiny fraction of what even a basic phone processes today.
Oh, absolutely minuscule.
And while most kids his age were out playing soccer in the streets of Uruguay, which is huge there,
Right, the national pastime.
Alberto was engaged in a different kind of game, a much deeper one, really. A deep dive into the machine's inner workings.
So not just playing the games, but taking them apart, mentally.
Precisely. He describes his early hacking, and we use that term carefully here, meaning exploration, as producing an interruption on the processor. He used a simple device connected to the standard adapter.
Okay.
With the press of a button, he could peek directly into the machine's inner workings, seeing the raw memory contents displayed in assembler.
Wow, assembler at 12. That's serious curiosity. That's the low-level language computers truly understand.
Right. This wasn't about breaking things maliciously. It was about reverse engineering, about understanding how these complex systems fundamentally operated. He learned how to modify game lives, changing the value of 6 lives to 10 so he could play longer.
The classic kid hacker move, trying to get more lives in a game. But it shows that desire to understand and manipulate the system, even then.
Totally. This wasn't just a pastime. It was his passion, profound curiosity that really set him apart.
You've really painted a picture of that young Alberto hunched over his Spectrum. And that early, almost compulsive curiosity isn't just a quirky detail, is it?
No, not at all.
It highlights the fundamental traits that define the best ethical hackers. That relentless desire to understand how things work, and that playful, experimental approach to systems. That's precisely what leads to significant discoveries. Whether you're tweaking game parameters or uncovering critical vulnerabilities in massive enterprise systems later on,
It's the same mindset.
it really is. And what's even more telling about his formative years is this truly amazing detail you mentioned from the source. It just perfectly illustrates his unique passion.
The magazine.
Yeah. Imagine for a kid in Uruguay back then, getting a letter in the mail. Not from Santa Claus, but confirming your technical submission has been published in a Spanish magazine called Micromania.
He said it was better than Santa Claus.
I bet.
Yeah.
And then the wait. This long, eager wait, sometimes a year, year and a half, for the physical magazine to actually arrive in Uruguay. That's dedication.
Incredible patience for a kid.
But when it did, seeing his name, his work, published, that was his truly amazing beginning in the hacking world, as he puts it. It solidified his path.
So you see that passion from a very young age. Now, fast forward a bit, and we see his perspective on formal education. It's interesting.
Okay, how so?
Alberto earned a degree in computer sciences, but he starkly states, and I'm quoting here, "University, I learned nothing about security except how to hack the systems from the university." Just kidding.
Oh, well, there's often a kernel of truth in jokes like that, right? Especially back then.
Exactly. It almost makes you chuckle, thinking about how far behind formal education was back in 1994 when he started university. At that time, security was barely, if at all, considered a formal part of the career curriculum.
Yeah, cybersecurity as a dedicated field was really in its infancy.
The closest thing, he notes, was systems auditory, which only appeared in the final year of study, so his foundational security knowledge. Largely self-taught, driven by that same intense curiosity he showed as a kid with the Spectrum.
Which makes sense. The field was moving faster than academia could keep up, essentially. So he had to learn it himself.
Right. And this self-taught approach continued straight into his first professional role, which began around 2004. He became a computer forensics examiner for child pornography cases in Uruguay.
Wow, that's incredibly heavy work, especially as a first role.
Extremely heavy. And it was a position that demanded a high degree of responsibility, something he took very, very seriously. He emphasizes the profound impact of his work. The result of what you do will affect the life of a person. So you have to be competent, responsible, know what you're doing.
That's a huge weight to carry. You have to be meticulous. You have to be right.
Absolutely. He poured himself into learning the intricacies of forensics, understanding the immense gravity of his tasks, but he eventually left this field.
I can imagine why. The toll.
Exactly. Not because of a lack of skill or dedication, but because of the sheer emotional toll of the material he had to review. He described it as too much, something he didn't ever expect to see. The sources indicate he had sleepless nights just grappling with the horrific content.
That's understandable. It speaks to the hidden mental burden in some areas of cybersecurity that we don't often talk about.
For sure. But crucially, he retained all that invaluable computer forensics knowledge, which, ironically, would later become a key and incredibly painful part of his own legal battle.
Wow. The skills he learned to fight crime were later used against him.
That seems to be the shape of it. So with that foundation of self-taught expertise and a clearly defined ethical compass, Alberto's professional journey began to reveal this remarkably consistent pattern.
Okay, what kind of pattern?
It's almost as if he couldn't help but stumble upon systemic weaknesses, things that were just broken. And his impulse every single time was to report them.
The responsible thing to do.
Which brings us to a series of events that really set the stage for the life-altering incident we'll discuss next. A moment where his good intentions just collided head-on with a system unprepared or maybe unwilling to understand them.
Okay, so he has a history of finding things and reporting them.
Yes, consistently. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was his established practice. It shows his ethical compass was consistent. For instance, in 2016, he uncovered a security vulnerability in the stock exchange of Asuncion, Paraguay.
A stock exchange? That's pretty critical infrastructure.
Absolutely. He couldn't contact them directly, couldn't find a proper security contact. So what did he do? He contacted the CERT, the Computer Emergency Response Team of Uruguay.
Right, the CERT. Think of them as like a national digital 9/11, a trusted intermediary.
Exactly. He shared the information, clearly stating his motivation. It's not my problem. I just want to let you know. Pure information sharing. And within a few days, through CERT's network, the problem was solved, fixed. Which just highlights his consistent mindset. Identify, report, step back, trust that the information will be used for good.
This really forces us to ask that crucial question again. Why do ethical hackers like Alberto face such risks for doing what should be encouraged? What should be standard practice, really?
It seems backwards.
It is. This pattern of responsible disclosure, which is essentially what Alberto was doing, is critically important for overall cybersecurity. But as he points out, at the time of these incidents, there's a glaring lack of infrastructure for ethical hacking in Uruguay.
Like no formal channels.
Pretty much. There were no established bug bounty programs, which are common practice in many parts of the world today, where companies actually pay security researchers to find and report vulnerabilities legally.
Right, they incentivize it.
Exactly. But even more crucially, there was, and in many places still is, an absence of legal warranties for security researchers. Legal protection.
So they're kind of operating in a gray area, legally speaking.
A very dangerous gray area. This means people like Alberto live with the constant fear of consequences for simply reporting or even just smelling a vulnerability, as he puts it. He calls it a lose-lose situation.
Oh.
People became afraid to report issues to the CERT because they saw what happened to him or heard about similar cases. This fear, paradoxically, severely harms overall information security.
Because things go unreported.
Exactly. When a society fails to provide safe, structured channels for ethical hackers, it doesn't just silence good actors. It inadvertently creates a dangerous security blind spot. System administrators lose a vital source of intelligence. It makes it incredibly difficult to measure the true security posture of systems, to understand what problems are lurking, track threats.
You're basically flying blind.
You are, and you're giving a lot of advantage to the bad guys, as Alberto says. It makes society as a whole less secure. His experience vividly illustrates that our societal and legal frameworks can sometimes become the biggest vulnerability themselves.
That's a powerful and deeply unsettling insight. Makes you wonder how many critical vulnerabilities are out there right now, unreported, just because people are too afraid.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
It really is. Which brings us to the central event. The one that ultimately led to Alberto's legal troubles, an incident that truly underscores the painful irony of a white hat act having severe black hat repercussions.
Okay, set the scene.
The scene is October 2014. Alberto is at his ex-girlfriend's apartment. He's using her notebook to access her medical provider's website. She needs to check something, maybe schedule an appointment, and casually offers him the password.
Okay, pretty normal scenario.
Totally normal. And then, after what he describes as a few seconds of silence, he delivers this truly shocking statement that just completely blindsided her. No, I'm already in.
Wait, what? Without the password?
Without the password. His ex-girlfriend was understandably bewildered, asking, "What? What did you do?" And Alberto's response was almost as unbelievable as the discovery itself. Nothing. I just put admin in the username and admin in the password, and I'm in as administrator.
No. Admin. On a medical provider's system.
Yes. His disbelief was palpable. This is a medical provider system. This cannot be happening. Think about that for a moment. A medical provider entrusted with highly sensitive patient data.
Protected by the most basic default credentials imaginable. It's Security 101, what not to do.
It was a glaring, almost absurd security flaw, a fundamental breach of trust and standard security hygiene.
Unbelievable. So what did he do then? He's staring at administrator access to potentially thousands of medical records.
Well, what's truly striking here is his immediate and instinctive response. He was the quintessential white hat hacker in that moment. He stumbles upon this massive flaw.
And his immediate thought isn't, what can I do with this, but how do I fix this?
Exactly. Within just 15 minutes of his shocking discovery, he meticulously described the problem, provided his own IP address so they could verify his access, and sent all the details straight to the CERT of Uruguay.
Wow, 15 minutes. That's fast. Shows his priority was clear.
Absolutely. His speed and precision just underscore his unwavering commitment to ethical disclosure. His concern wasn't about exploiting it or gaining anything. It was purely about ensuring it was fixed and that vulnerable data was protected.
Did he hear back from the CERT?
He did. He describes receiving an email back from Santiago Paz, the director of CERT, on a Saturday, confirming the vulnerability.
Okay, so confirmation. That must have been a relief.
Huge relief for Alberto. He felt, and I quote, "I can sleep without any problem tonight because I did what I had to do." His motivation was purely to protect others. Remember, he wasn't even a patient of that provider. His data wasn't at risk.
But the information of over 200,000 people was? That's, what, almost 10% of Uruguay's population?
Around 9%, yeah. A staggering number. But he emphasized that even if it had been just 2 medical records, it would still have been just wrong, that information should be protected.
That really highlights his ethical stance. It wasn't about the scale, it was about the principle.
Absolutely. And this also highlights Alberto's naivete in that moment, in the best sense of the word. He genuinely believed that doing the right thing would result in the right outcome.
The problem gets fixed, people are protected, end of story.
That was his sole expectation. Fix the problem, protect the 200,000 people. As he later reflected, when you do what you considered is the right thing to do, the outcome is not what you expect. And that's sad.
It's a painful realization, isn't it? That disconnect between ethical intent and real-world consequences. Does that happen often in this field?
It seems to. You see this pattern often, especially for white hat hackers. There's this fundamental gap between the technical reality of finding vulnerabilities and the legal frameworks that often just don't get it.
Right. You have individuals with pure intentions, basically doing free security audits for organizations that desperately need them.
And instead of getting thanks, or even just being left alone,
They're often seen as criminals. It creates a chilling effect, making the very people who could secure our digital infrastructure hesitant to act. It's a systemic failure, really.
well, you'd think that after such a clear, responsible disclosure of a major vulnerability affecting hundreds of thousands of people.
You'd think the provider would lock things down tight,
Right.
right? Full audit, new procedures.
You would think, but incredibly, you'd be wrong. What happened next is just a frustrating testament to a system that, quite frankly, refused to learn.
Oh no, don't tell me he found something else.
Worse, in 2015, just about a year after the initial admin incident, his girlfriend again asked him to access the medical provider's website.
Okay.
Now, after 15 years in the security field, Alberto says he could smell when something didn't look good. He just had this instinct, you know. He sensed a problem lurking beneath the surface.
Security sixth sense.
Pretty much. And he was right. Within just 10 minutes, he accessed all the medical records again.
Not admin again,
Right.
surely not.
No, this time it was even simpler, almost frighteningly so.
Right.
He didn't need any username, any password, any authentication whatsoever. All he had to do was modify a parameter in the URL. Literally changing a number in the web address, like changing patient ID 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 to jump effortlessly between different patient records.
Oh, that's bad. That's an insecure direct object reference, or
Mhm.
IDO. That's web security 101 badness.
Yeah.
So anyone can just cycle through numbers and pull up records.
Anyone. And Alberto immediately recognized the terrifying implication. An attacker could simply create a text file with a sequential list of these modified URLs cycling through patient IDs.
And then what?
This list could then be indexed by search engines like Google, making all 200,000 medical records publicly searchable by name.
Oh my God, your private medical history just searchable on Google. That's a nightmare scenario.
Uh-huh.
A massive public data breach waiting to happen.
Far beyond the implications of the initial admin flaw, his reaction was just incredulous. Oh my God, these guys never learn.
You can feel the frustration. He must have assumed they'd not only fix the first basic problem, but do a proper security review.
Exactly. He assumed they'd look deeper, understanding that if such a fundamental flaw existed, there were likely other issues. His findings definitively told him they hadn't bothered.
So what did he do this time? Back to the CERT.
Yep. Once again, within 15 minutes, he emailed the CERT, providing the exact URL and the parameters needed to exploit this new, even simpler vulnerability. He received a thank you email from another CERT person.
Just a thank you.
Seems like it. His frustration was palpable. He resolved right then and there to stop accessing the site. He even reflected on how much money he could have made if he were paid for these discoveries, especially with crypto taking off.
Which is the irony, right? Because today, companies pay huge amounts in bug bounties for exactly this kind of finding.
Precisely. He stressed his motivation was always security, not profit. His actions were purely ethical. Finding and reporting. Not hacking, not stealing data.
It really underscores the failure of the organization here. Not just failing to fix the first obvious flaw, but ignoring the deeper issues, leaving themselves wide open.
It's truly inspiring to hear that level of pure motivation, that ethical drive, especially when you think about the potential financial gains he just walked away from.
It is.
Yet, I can imagine some listeners thinking, okay, but he did access all the records again, even if it was just to confirm the vulnerability. That act itself might still raise an eyebrow for some. How do we bridge that gap in public understanding, distinguishing between a security audit and malicious intrusion, especially when the legal system itself seems to struggle with it?
That's a really crucial point, and it highlights the challenge. Communicating nuanced technical actions to a non-technical audience, including judges and lawyers, is incredibly hard. The key difference, legally and ethically, is intent. Alberto's intent was clearly to identify, confirm the scope, and report. He wasn't downloading terabytes of data. He wasn't manipulating it. He wasn't trying to sell it or leak it. He was demonstrating the vulnerability, proving it existed, which is a standard, necessary part of responsible disclosure. You often have to show how bad it is for people to take it seriously.
So it's about demonstrating the risk responsibly.
Exactly. The struggle for the legal system often comes from a lack of technical literacy. They hear accessed records and immediately jump to unauthorized intrusion, applying a very blunt instrument. They often fail to differentiate between that ethical reconnaissance and malicious exploitation. This is why education is so vital, not just for the public, but for the very institutions meant to uphold justice. They need to understand the difference.
And unfortunately, in Alberto's case, that understanding just wasn't there. Despite his consistent ethical behavior, his clear intentions, the devastating turning point came when those good intentions were criminally misinterpreted.
Years later.
Right. Yes. In 2017, nearly 3 years after his initial discoveries, Interpol arrived at his apartment with a search warrant. They arrested him, seized all his equipment, computers, phones, everything.
Interpol, for reporting a vulnerability.
Seems that way. He was held for 2 agonizing days in an Interpol cell, interrogated without even being told the specific charges against him.
That sounds terrifying. And confusing.
Absolutely. Then, on September 11th, a date that already carries its own weight, a Monday, a judge sentenced him to prison as a prevented measure for a computer-related crime.
A prevented measure, meaning pre-trial detention.
Essentially, yes, because she thought he was a flight risk or could interfere with the investigation, the alleged crime, hacking the medical provider back in February 2017, not the 2014 or 2015 incidents you reported.
Wait, 2017? Did he even access it then?
He says no, and the judge's rationale for imprisoning him was, to Alberto, just baffling, deeply rooted in what he calls a fear of the unknown.
What was her reasoning?
She believes he was pretty likely to escape the country. And even more astonishingly, that his knowledge rate to computer security was so high that he could alter the rest of the process, like interfere with the investigation remotely with his mind, I guess.
Wow. That sounds like something out of a movie, not a courtroom. Like she thought he was some kind of digital wizard who could tamper with evidence from afar.
Alberto's incredulous response says it all. I cannot do those kind of things with my mind. Not yet. He felt the judge simply couldn't understand a profile she never faced before, someone with deep technical knowledge, and so she took the easy way out, sending him to prison.
Fear driving the decision, not facts.
That's how he saw it. This profound lack of understanding of a technical profile led to his bail being denied. Despite his mother offering 2 houses, substantial money, a lot of assets as warranty, denied.
Unbelievable. So his knowledge itself was seen as a threat.
It seems that way. It was a clear demonstration of how a legal system unequipped to understand technical realities can default to extreme punitive measures, often at the expense of actual justice.
And this really forces us to confront that fundamental question about the justice system's ability to comprehend technical realities, especially when it comes to the legitimate tools and practices of cybersecurity professionals. They confiscated all his equipment.
Right. Computers, storage devices.
And to an uninformed eye, all that gear probably looked like he was up to no good, leading to immediate assumptions of criminal intent. But we need to clarify what this so-called hacking stuff actually was.
Please do, because the prosecution likely painted a very different picture.
I'm sure they did. For example, they found numerous ledger wallets. Remember those physical devices for storing cryptocurrencies securely?
Yeah, hardware wallets.
The authorities apparently mistook them for simple pen drives or some kind of illicit device. They had no clue that Alberto was, in fact, the official reseller for Ledger in Uruguay and Paraguay. He's receiving boxes of these legitimate products directly from Ledger in France. It was his business.
So, perfectly legal business equipment was seen as suspicious.
Exactly. Similarly, they found credit card writers and readers. Again, to the authorities, this likely screamed fraud or carding.
Yeah, that sounds bad out of context.
Very bad.
Yeah.
However, Alberto was also a reseller for Euclid, a UK company issuing Visa debit cards chargeable with over 200 different cryptocurrencies. He was testing these cards, their security features, for his business, a legitimate business operation involving just a tiny commission. These were tools for legitimate business, not crime.
So the context was completely missed or ignored.
It seems so. And the prosecution's actual case against him appears equally riddled with misunderstandings and, well, outright falsehoods, according to Alberto.
Like what?
The alleged Bitcoin ransom email, supposedly demanding 15 Bitcoins, a huge sum then, astronomical now, but it had a blank address.
A blank address, meaning?
Meaning there's no specific Bitcoin wallet address provided to send the ransom to. It makes absolutely no sense. As Alberto said, it was the most pathetic ransomware attack I ever saw. Even if the medical provider wanted to pay, they couldn't have.
Okay, that's bizarre. What else?
Well, the core accusation was data theft, presumably linked to the ransom. But as far as Alberto knew, nothing was ever released or leaked from the medical provider's systems. And the logs. They showed only 200 megabytes of outgoing traffic on the supposed attack days.
200 megabytes. That's tiny.
Tiny. Like, not even a movie in MP4 format, he said. Certainly not the terabytes you'd expect if someone was actually downloading a database with 200,000 patient records.
So the data volume doesn't match the accusation at all?
Not even close. Then there's the IP address trace. The media and the interrogation claimed his IP was traced to the ransom email. Alberto says this was completely false.
So where did his IP show up?
The only connection from his house on the day of the alleged 2017 attack was from a Shodan plugin. Shodan is like a search engine for internet-connected devices. Security researchers use it all the time. His plugin sent a completely not harmful test scan, the kind of thing that gets automatically dropped by the firewall. Benign reconnaissance, basically.
Nothing to do with sending a ransom email or stealing data.
Apparently not. And the fact that a second person was also arrested in a completely different location for the same alleged crime totally contradicts the prosecution's single IP trace story pointing only at him.
The whole case sounds incredibly shaky.
Very shaky. And Alberto emphasizes again that the vulnerabilities he actually did find in 2014 and 2015, the admin, the URL parameter thing, were so simple, a kid can do it. They didn't require a genie or a master hacker.
Which makes you wonder.
Exactly. He wondered if others had found them too and simply didn't report them. Which brings us back to that chilling effect. The justice system here seems to have failed to grasp the technical reality, resorting to fear, misinterpretation, and what looks like a convenient but false narrative.
Beyond the legal mess, the immense personal cost Alberto paid for doing what he believed was right is just staggering. The financial toll alone is almost incomprehensible.
The crypto he lost.
Yeah, he lost 26 bitcoins, 1,000 Ethereum, and 10,000 Litecoins, all seized or inaccessible while he was imprisoned. He states, right now we're talking about millions of dollars probably.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Depending on the market peaks, tens of millions possibly. Life-altering money, gone.
Just wiped out. But money, as he painfully learned, was only one part of the loss. He spent 8 months and a fraction, almost 9 agonizing months in prison.
9 months for reporting security flaws years earlier.
It's hard to fathom. His release finally came after 3 denied requests for bail. His lawyer's appeal eventually came through, declaring he shouldn't be in prison. But there was a catch.
What was that?
A $10,000 bail condition. His mother immediately paid it, and within hours he was released. But this experience gave him the shocking, deeply disillusioning realization about justice.
How so?
He acutely felt the inherent unfairness of a bail system based purely on wealth, seeing poor people remain in prison simply because they don't have the money, while those with resources can buy their freedom even pre-trial.
It exposed the inequality baked into the system.
Deeply. For Alberto, this was a catastrophic domino effect on his faith in justice in the system. It just crumbled. He felt naive, silly. He realized the cruel real world was far different from his perception. He said, I thought I had a lot of experience in the world, but I realized in my prison time that I was really naive. I was really silly.
Wow. What's truly fascinating and heartbreaking is how deeply this experience reshaped his entire understanding of the world. It highlights the immense personal sacrifices made by those who try to prioritize integrity in what turns out to be a flawed system.
And the damage went far beyond the financial and the legal, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He lost things money could never replace. People he loved passed away while he was in prison. He couldn't be there for them. Those are the scars forever he now carries.
Yeah.
The kind of profound loss that simply cannot be repaired.
That's devastating.
It is. He reflects, I don't think there will ever be justice. What they did is something that cannot be ever repaired in any way. It's just a heartbreaking testament to the true unquantifiable cost of systemic misunderstanding and injustice.
Is there any silver lining? What's his status now?
Well, the good news, if you can call it that after everything, is that his case is now closed. He has no criminal record, no restrictions. He is completely free in the legal sense.
Okay, that's something at least.
It is. But the emotional and personal scars remain, obviously. And this experience undeniably had a chilling effect on responsible disclosure, not just for him, but as a cautionary tale for the broader cybersecurity community in Uruguay and beyond.
So does he still look for vulnerabilities?
Amazingly, yes. Despite everything, he admits, I kept doing it, and I kept finding problems in systems. That curiosity, that drive, it's still there. In fact, within 2 months of his release, he found two very important security issues in two different government systems.
Wow, so did he report them?
This is the sad outcome. Now he just takes a snapshot from my ego, personal record of his discovery, and goes to bed.
He doesn't report them anymore.
He's profoundly nervous about reporting these findings. And can you blame him? It's a legitimate concern shared by many who discover vulnerabilities now, creating that dangerous knowledge gap for society. It really is a lose-lose situation for all of us.
That chilling effect is arguably one of the most damaging long-term consequences of stories like Alberto's. If the people best equipped to find vulnerabilities are too scared to report them, we all suffer. Which brings us to Alberto's core belief, his philosophy, a philosophy that this entire ordeal inadvertently championed, even in its tragic outcome. Hacking is not a crime.
It became his mantra almost.
It did, and this isn't just a personal conviction. It's a statement he embodies. He mentioned the founder of the Hacking is Not a Crime organization personally messaged him on LinkedIn inviting him to join. That was a huge honor for Alberto.
Recognition from peers who understand the distinction.
Exactly. It was validation. And what's also incredibly powerful is the unwavering trust from his inner circle. He shares that no one who knew him, no friend, no family member ever asked Alberto, "Did you do the thing?"
They didn't need to ask.
No, because they knew me and they already knew the answers. This speaks volumes to his character and reputation. Their trust in him, even when facing such serious accusations, was his ultimate validation. It proved his intentions were always understood by those who truly knew him.
And this really brings up that crucial dilemma again, doesn't it? If the technical actions, the tools, the skills can appear similar, what truly differentiates a hacker in the curious explorer sense from a criminal?
Yeah, where's the line?
As Alberto eloquently explains it, cybersecurity professionals, whether they lean towards ethical discovery or malicious intent, often share fundamental traits. Endless curiosity, creativity, and often the same tools, skills, knowledge. We're all human beings, driven by similar intellectual impulses.
So what's the differentiator?
The critical difference, Alberto firmly states, is ethics. His personal ethics. He makes it absolutely clear, I will never use any kind of knowledge, tools, skills to commit any kind of crime. That's on me. I will never do that. That's the difference.
It's about intent and personal boundaries.
Precisely. He describes his actions typing admin, modifying a URL parameter, not as sophisticated exploits, but as something that you do naturally, like a game, driven by that innate curiosity. He emphasizes that is not a crime, that is not illegal.
He wasn't breaking in with force, so to speak.
No, he wasn't altering anything in the system maliciously, installing malware, sending advanced pirate emails to create reverse shells and take control. He considers his discoveries very silly and stupid that unfortunately worked, highlighting the basic, often overlooked nature of the vulnerabilities he found.
And he sees the alienation of ethical hackers as a loss for everyone.
A huge lose-lose situation. Society loses excellent potential professionals who could be contributing immensely to our collective security. And he points out the sheer absurdity and inefficiency of his own imprisonment. It costs taxpayers $900 per month for 8 months.
For what benefit?
Exactly. A ridiculous waste of public funds for a nonviolent individual. He believes he could have done community work or teach the children as a far more productive restorative measure.
Instead of just punishment.
Right. The system, in his view, didn't bother to truly understand his profile, his motivations, or the potential for a different approach. Instead, it opted for a solution that, as he eloquently puts it, destroys the person with no benefit to the society and potentially can create a much worse and dangerous person than the danger the person supposedly had before going to prison.
That's a stark warning for any society hoping to build a more secure digital future. Which leads us perfectly into Alberto's powerful advice for those aspiring to enter cybersecurity. Advice deeply informed by his harsh, unfair experience.
What does he tell people now?
He stresses that universities and courses, while teaching technical skills, often don't teach you certain things that are going to happen in your life. This isn't just about the tech. It's about the profound human element of the job.
The messy reality.
Totally. The field involves a lot of pressure, seeing things that you weren't ever told that you were going to see, and dealing with incredibly difficult ethical dilemmas, including internal crimes like colleagues committing fraud within an organization.
He mentioned an example of that.
Yeah, a powerful anecdote about discovering a colleague altering critical information in a government system.
Yeah.
And the immense pressure he felt reporting it to upper management who he quickly realized really didn't want the scandal known. They wanted it buried.
Wow. Those are the kinds of storms, as he calls them, that no textbook prepares you for.
Exactly.
Ah,
He dismantles the rose garden fallacy, often associated with a glittering career in cybersecurity. He warns that the journey is not going to be a rose garden, but will have storms, and they never told you to bring an umbrella. You're forced to learn on the run, making critical decisions without the luxury of time to think them through.
pressure cooker situations.
Definitely. And he encapsulates this challenge perfectly by saying technical stuff is so easy compared to ethical stuff or real life stuff.
Yeah.
It's much easier to work with machines than with people, which just underscores the profound emotional and moral weight that comes with being a guardian of digital systems.
That really connects to a bigger picture, doesn't it? About cultivating resilience and a deep sense of purpose, not just technical mastery, for a career in this field.
So what's his core advice now?
His core advice for aspiring cybersecurity professionals is simple, yet profound. Be aware. He wants everyone who loves cybersecurity to enter the field, absolutely, but they must understand that things that are not nice are going to happen.
Don't be naive like he felt he was.
Exactly. Don't be surprised. Just be prepared to act without time to think. He uses this compelling analogy of a pilot who saved an airplane from crashing. That life-saving maneuver wasn't a snap decision made purely in the moment of crisis.
It was muscle memory.
Essentially, yes, it was a decision made 20 years ago during training in a flight simulator over and over. Cybersecurity professionals need similar preparation for ethical dilemmas and unforeseen challenges. You have to build that moral muscle long before the moment of truth arrives.
That makes a lot of sense, pre-planning your ethical responses.
And he also delves into the motivation for entering the field. When people ask him for advice on starting in cybersecurity, he really dislikes hearing because of the money as the primary driver.
He wants to see passion.
Passion is key. He passionately advocates for finding true passion, comparing it to artists in the NFT world who pursue their dreams despite doubts and initial lack of success, driven by an intrinsic love for their craft, for creating.
And for him, cybersecurity is that passion.
Deeply personal. He says, cybersecurity is part of me. I cannot imagine my life without this. It's just who he is. And he recounts that poignant story of a U.S. hacker who served 12 years for hacking a school system.
What happened to him?
Initially, that person vowed never to touch a computer again because the trauma and the punitive system had just broken something in him. But eventually he returned to hacking in the sense of finding problems, exploring systems, because it was his life's calling. It was an undeniable part of who he was.
He couldn't stay away.
He couldn't. And the system, Alberto laments, makes a person lose that. It crushes that spirit, leading to yet another lose-lose situation. Society loses out on an excellent potential professional, and the individual loses a core part of their identity.
Alberto's story truly illuminates the core tension of this entire deep dive, doesn't it? This profound clash between an individual's ethical responsibility to protect and secure, and a system often ill-equipped, sometimes seemingly unwilling to understand that critical intent.
Stark contrast.
And he's willing to share his story, every raw detail, to tell everybody about these often unseen realities of the field. His hope is that his painful experience can somehow make a revolution, make a change, and ultimately improve things for the next generation of security professionals, so they don't have to walk the same lonely, dangerous path he did.
Using his own trauma to try and build something better.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting and profoundly sobering as we wrap up. Alberto's story reminds us that doing the right thing isn't always rewarded. Not with praise, not even with basic recognition sometimes.
Sometimes it's punished.
Sometimes, as in his case, it's met with devastating personal costs. Millions of dollars lost, irreplaceable moments missed with loved ones, all just for trying to do the right thing. It's a stark, powerful, cautionary tale for anyone navigating the complexities of our increasingly digital world. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how our systems actually function or malfunction.
Which leaves us with a really important question, a provocative thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. In a world that is increasingly, undeniably reliant on complex digital systems, how can we foster environments where ethical vulnerability disclosure is not just accepted, but actively incentivized and legally protected?
How do we prevent these future lose-lose scenarios?
Exactly. How do we truly make society more secure? Because consider this. If the very act of identifying a critical vulnerability, something that could harm thousands or millions, can lead to personal devastation for the one reporting it, What hidden dangers might be lurking right now in our digital infrastructure?
Dangers that no one dares to speak up about.
Precisely. What's the true cost of that fear? What vulnerabilities remain unfixed because the person who found them looked at Alberto's story or stories like it and decided the personal risk was just too high? That's the question we need to grapple with.